Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to aidbees. We're back with another podcast on something as important as education today. And today we're talking about creating compassionate classrooms and bringing kindness to classrooms through students and teachers alike. Today we have a very lovely panel with us. We have Miss Lakshmi Kumar from the Orchid School, Pune. She's the principal of Orchid School, Pune, and she's the founder director of the school. She's an experienced academic and administrative director, and she's also done her master's in social work from Tata Institute. She has more than 28 years of experience being an educator, administrator, coaching expert, so on and so forth. And she's also been connected with the Sweden India project throughout. We really welcome you with open heart, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining in. We also have Miss Anita Paul here, another great personality. She's a global goodwill ambassador and she's done her MA from DAV College with over 25 years of experience in different positions of being administrator, principal, educator. She comes from a background of vast skills and more than that, a lot of experience. She is currently the head of school at Mayur School, Jaipur, and she's also been the former head and coordinator of multiple education institutes like Indus World School, Shiv Nadar, GD Goenka, etc. We really welcome you, Anita, ma'am. We're really glad to have you both here.
Mom to all.
So, starting off the discussion with the idea of, the elements of a happy and engaging classroom, so to speak. So, being teachers and being somebody who's dealing with the classroom, we'll start with Anita, ma'am, here. Ma'am, what do you think are the basic elements of a happy and engaging classroom space?
So, see, I have the luxury of being founder principal for the institutions that I work with, and right now also currently. And when my team starts building up, my first thing itself is that you need to come without feeling any inhibitions about talking about the baggages that you have, because once you shed those baggages, you're a happy soul. And if you're a happy soul, you take that to your classroom, and your children love that. You kind of clock them inside, and then you don't have that kind of happiness around yourself as an aura, and then you can't kind of go into the classroom with that, because children are very quick to understand what's happening around them. It's a God gift. I always believe that. And I always tell them, we all are human beings. If we
Absolutely.
don't have those issues, if we don't feel those kind of emotions, we won't be humans, we would be gods. So
Absolutely.
it's the first step for a human to be happy is to, break all inhibitions and communicate. So the biggest word here is communicate. Once you communicate to anybody, it doesn't need to be your own relative or your own friend. It could be a stranger you want to, kind of build up a friendship with, and then want to, kind of just download everything that has been bothering you. And it is very important in education, because if you're not a happy soul, um, you will not be able to learn new things also, because you are so caught up with your own emotions that you don't want to do anything new other than what you already know. And it is
Absolutely.
very important today, and especially after COVID, we've realized that we don't have enough time to unlearn things and learn new things. So
Absolutely.
as you said, it's very important to have an engaging classroom with happy souls. And that means not only my teachers, my parents also. Because
Very
see,
correct.
say my parents are the educators at home and my teachers are the parents at school. The role reversal. So
Right.
both have to be very happy, because at the end of it, it is the child who will benefit from it. You
Right.
know.
Lakshmi ma'am, to add to that, how do you think that the things that Anita ji talked about in terms of being engaging and being, connecting the classroom essentially, how do you think that this particular phenomenon differs from the older methods of teaching? Are there any differences that you see in the newer and the older ones?
Um, just to define the climate of a happy classroom, from what Anita was saying, I think first of all it includes all stakeholders, because classroom is just not the four walls, the physical space. We're also talking about the emotional and social and spiritual space. So if I were to kind of give the 5 A's mantra, to start with, accept. The fact that children come from varied backgrounds, varied cultural context, social context, probably cognitive abilities and other competencies, to accept unconditionally that here is a bunch of children that I'm going to educate. And I think that's the first, and show it in action, not just in words. Knowing that every child comes with certain strengths, and that's what makes a whole class vibrant. The next one is to provide access to everything that's happening within the school space. When we're talking about an equity, and we're talking about an equity based on the children's needs, and the access to even dialogue and negotiate, and not just physical resources, access to be able to articulate and have a possibility to share my feelings. The third one is the accommodate element of it, is to say that we do have children with special needs, and special needs are not necessarily cognitive. We all have special needs in our emotional, social, psychological realm. To accommodate that, and to say that there is room for these variations. And the most important thing is to acknowledge. Acknowledgement is not just a mere praises, to say that how each one of us bring in this divine resources to the classroom and make it a very enriched ecosystem for learning. And last but not the least is to adapt, to help students adapt to new classes, new paradigms, new learnings, new technology. And it's not just for the children, even for the adults, to say that to help support change management is to adapt, because that's the only reality in the future. And adapt without, again, being judged, adapt without having conditions, and adapt or help adapt, so that all of us have their growth curve. And I see this as an ecosystem of a happy classroom.
That's very true, and also it clears a lot many things of what is required in the classroom, right? It also brings me to another thought of how schools become, and teachers specifically become, an agent of conditioning within children, right? So I just wanted to put this idea out and know your thoughts on it, as to, when the onus of the school, when the onus of conditioning a child comes to the school and the teacher, how do you tackle that situation as an educator? Where do you see your responsibility as an educator in terms of the conditioning?
May I go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, I think it's a myth to think that we condition children. Children come very conditioned. They spend 16 hours outside the space of learning. And even within the space of learning, there's a lot of conditioning that happens because of peer influence and the most famous word, social media influence. So I think, first of all, we need to understand the narrative of the influences of all these social agencies on the children. And we are a significant part of shaping, and sometimes even help them unlearn this conditioning. I think that's a critical role in it, that we don't have to accept the narrative that I am a mere product of, or mere victim of my environment, that I can overcome my situation, and that I can make very special choices, and that I refuse to be conditioned by my environment. I think that's the narrative teachers are capable of inspiring and influencing our children at the thought process, hence the behavior process.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Anita ma'am, would you like to add your valuable thoughts on it?
Yes. So see, I come from boarding backgrounds, and I have a very different perspective towards, this conditioning business, which I struggle whenever I meet a day school, teachers, and they say, "Ma'am, it's impossible to do anything because, they've been brought up, they've been conditioned by their parents and their grandparents." But in boarding schools, you have them for almost 8 months with you, and 8 years to, if it's primary schools, also boarding schools, then you have them for good 12 years with you. and the onus definitely lies on the school to uncondition them and give them the platform to experience themselves what they want and realize it with making mistakes and learning from those mistakes and gaining confidence in asking questions. So that is, I think, so that is a slight liberty that a boarding school can take over a day school, because you have them for more hours with you. You're spending your mornings with them, you're spending your afternoons, your evenings, even before they go to sleep, you are almost with them doing prep times and study halls. So you have a lot of time with them, and they're away from the home environment. So that's the luxury that the boarding schools have. Saying that, day schools can also adapt to that, but it is just that we are so constrained with time management during school hours for a day school, because you can't do anything beyond that time. And you're structured with your school program that we would say that there is a value education classes in some of the schools, or there are some moral science classes happening, but that too is a very limited exposure to a child to experience something from what he has been taught and continuously he sees when he goes back home. So I agree on what Lakshmi ma'am said, that it is actually a norm, and we all have grown up with that. It's not that I was not exposed to something like that at my place, or maybe Lakshmi ma'am has gone through that, or maybe you have gone through that. But today, modern times, even with the evil of the social network that people talk about, there are some things very good about social network also. There are a lot of spiritual talks that happen. There are very motivational. Young people can go through these podcasts of emotional, mental, happiness, and how to tackle depressions, those kind of things. So there is a flip side to both of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
but you need a mentor to guide you for that. So I will always say there has to be a mentor, and a mentor can be somebody who's not teaching the child in the school, but could be anybody. It could be even the didi who's sitting in the class.
Absolutely.
And in our society, I think so, we believe that every human has those emotions, regardless of their caste, creed, and gender.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So moving on this discussion to from the idea of this conditioning to the need again, right? So given how we look at kindness within students, because they're at a very founding, they're at a foundation age. They're at an age where they have to grow into becoming more responsible citizens. Where do you think, and given the current scenario, what do you think that is the biggest need, within the Indian education system, specifically in schools? Do you think kindness is the need, or do you think there is something more that schools need to talk about? Lakshmi ma'am, will start with you.
First of all, kindness is a very universal need, period.
Yeah.
I think all the living beings, I think the core element exists on kindness and the mutuality of it. I think how do we bring it to today's educational context is to let people experience it. I think we can't speak of kindness in vacuum.
So I think so. What Lakshmi ma'am also said is very correct. But kindness being a universal requirement for every human being, or even the animals around us. So the whole ecosystem requires kindness. But I think so. Empathy is another one which is very, very important, because it's a very cruel world, and you can be sympathetic towards somebody, but sympathy is not something that comes out of love or kindness. It comes out of pity. But empathy is something that comes out of concern of your fellow being, and it comes out of our ingrained love for each other. So compassionate is the word, empathy is the word, and is the need of the hour, because unfortunately we've lost a lot of our dear and near ones norms have changed in that scenario also. It's not anymore that the elderlies are passing away. It's our own, age groups or even younger kids who passed away during COVID. So
Right.
it gave me a great lesson that kindness, definitely, but empathy and a good ear to listen to the woes of the others. Because until and unless you're not a listener and you will only speak and speak and speak, you will never be able to hear the pain that is there in the system. You know,
Right.
so I think so. A good listener is what we always say. A teacher has to be a listener, but I think so. Everybody has to have that ear for hearing out, especially when there is a need. Not to ignore it. I always say, if a child comes and says, "Ma'am," that ma'am has stemmed out of something. It's not to ask you a question or to make you go, haywire in that work area, but it could be stemmed definitely. So just give a second to ask what is the matter.
Absolutely. So, when we mention here that this kindness and empathy is really important, what would be your say one line of formula for both of you to bring this compassion into classrooms? What do you think is the one way to bring this kindness, empathy, and conversations of compassion in your classrooms? Anita, ma'am, would you like to?
Good energy.
Good energy.
You always have to have that good energy, and you always have to have a smile on your face and a genuine one.
Absolutely, Lakshmi, ma'am.
Just be. Just be empathic. Just be compassionate. Just be kind. Demonstrate.
Absolutely. So, when we talk of demonstrating this and when we talk of bringing kindness to classrooms in general, largely, we talk of issues like, teaching kids about diversity, teaching kids about inclusion, teaching kids about sensitive issues that are there around the world. How do you think that an educator becomes responsible to bring all of this into the children's attention? Where do you place the onus of that on the educator, Lakshmi ma'am?
I genuinely believe that children listen with their eyes. Are you inclusive as a school, as a policy, as a principal? Are you treating people with equity? As I said, our words become a reality if that experience is passed on. So I go back to that be very watchful of what we are saying and what we are doing, because our children can see the gap between these two. And if we want our children to genuinely trust these words, this must be part of their reality and their ecosystem. They must experience few children in the classroom with different abilities and varied, differentiated capabilities. They must see it in the staff. They must see how they see how you treat a maushi or a kaka, they see how you treat a parent. They see how you, actually in a public space, how do you behave? I think it's this alignment is what will help really drive the point.
So they adapt from what you behave as or what we behave as grown-ups in front of them, right?
Yeah, so, it's like there's many times we say that, be quiet, I mean, I think we give ourselves away.
That's true. Anita, ma'am, your thoughts on that?
It's a
So,
disconnect that needs to be mindful about.
Absolutely.
so yeah, what Lakshmi ma'am is saying is absolutely correct. And I think so, this is again ingrained in our system. Very, I think so from the days of the Gurukuls. So that वही करो जो खुद कर सकते हो,
Hmm.
वो करो जो तुमको लगता है कि वो सही है सबके लिए. Very, very important. So even the value system and the ethos of our school, we all got together and we created the ethos, and we, thought about it, that what is the need of the hour today. And then we came up with words like empathy, integrity, autonomy. And now what we've started doing is we've started ingraining it in our teachers, because they need to learn and understand, if we're saying autonomy, what in true sense is that? And if you have been given that autonomy, you pass that out on your children. The management also follows that. Integrity, So what you're saying and what you are doing, you take the onus on yourself and accept it. You may be wrong. We'll help you with that, but be honest enough to take that on. So if you're doing it, your actions speak a lot, and you should not, what Lakshmi ma'am said, definitely not have a gap between the action and what is, kind of brought into the system. There has to be a connect, and a strong connect.
Right. So to bring on kindness into discussion again, how do you think that these gaps, as we are discussing, how do you think that kindness and compassion within the classrooms fill out these gaps? Is there a process to it, or is there a way that it does it?
So Lakshmi ma'am, would you like to go, or
You go.
okay? So see, and I have made sure that when maybe the terms, I think so, what Lakshmi ma'am said, Moshi and Kaka, is what we call Didi and Bhaiya. Am I right, Lakshmi ma'am?
Yeah, yeah.
So if I am respectful to them, if I involve them in every activity of my class, that percolates down to my child, and he sees that I am being respectful, even though they are my subordinates or maybe my support staff, but they're first human beings. So humanity is on the topmost. So if I follow that in front of them, they also learn that, and kindness comes in. You don't have to say the word kindness. It's in our actions, as Lakshmi ma'am said. Because when you're doing these kind of actions, they know if I come on the gate and I wish my guard a good morning, and I say a good afternoon or a bye while I'm leaving, or I just ask a statement, "Aaj aap kaise hain?" They hear all that, and they will follow it, because they say, oh, ये करना एक अच्छी चीज है, क्योंकि उससे दूसरा बंदा मुस्कुराया, उसका दिन अच्छा जाएगा, और अगर दिन अच्छा जाएगा, काम अच्छा जाएगा. So it's kind of, it's there in without saying any words of kindness.
Very true.
It's
Very
action.
true.
So
Very
this is
true.
what, yeah, and this is how you can bring it in your classroom.
Yeah. Lakshmi, I'm about bringing this kindness in classroom. Do you, given that you've seen so many generations of students so far on, do you think there's a specific formula that you go by to teach people or teach students about this sensitivity that we're talking about?
I think education has enormous possibilities by means of an academic discourse, of exploring an integrated approach to what kindness means, whether you transact a language lesson, or what happened in science, and what happened in history with people who have been kind or who have been extremely cruel, and what happens in the poetry. So you have all the means to teach. The subjects are clearly a means to teach the highest value of being a human being. And I think this has to be, again, a very consciously trained, built capacity in our teachers' approach. Otherwise, we would merely reduce a chapter to a syllabus, a curriculum with an agenda of assessment. Kaam khatam ho gaya hai. But what is important is that I'm given a chapter, I'm given a story, I'm given a poem, I'm given a historical narrative, or I'm given a geographical context, I'm given a civic lesson. But eventually, that is to create a harmonious society and pick up that one thread from each of those lessons of what the value disposition it brings to, because ultimate goal of education is to make a harmonious society and productive and extremely kind and supportive and compassionate human beings, and being economically independent and skilled are all incidental outcome, but the core purpose is to bring that. So I think to our teachers to make it very conscious that if you have an opportunity to talk of a value through a lesson, grab it.
Absolutely.
I think it has to be woven in, it has to be integrated so that it doesn't look like, in the value lesson, I can actually go to sleep. I mean, when you do a rapid read of Mahabharata, what values would you not touch? And it's, I think, the pinnacle of kindness, at the same time, honesty and integrity and, balance and unconditionality, you name it. You have all the values that are in it. I think an effective teacher would dive deep into it, bring these gems along with the so-called content and the ears and all the context.
Absolutely. So, this has been a really insightful discussion so far regarding compassionate classrooms in general. But what would be your one piece advice for involving kindness within classrooms to the teachers who are like, starting their careers, to the new teachers who are building up students for a better future now? Lakshmi ma'am, would you like to give your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not just for the new teachers. Old teachers also can get very negative and very bored and very, cynical. My one word of advice is there is no room for cynicism in education. If you are very cynical and if you are very untrusting and if you have this feeling kuch fayda nahi hai, then I think don't enter education. पहले treat करके फिर वापस आ जाना, because you got to work with heart full of hope and heart full of happiness, and you can have your days of dip and you can have your days of depressions and anger, because we are human beings. But I think to know how to deal with it so that I come back more pure and loving. I think that's the mantra that I give it to every one of us. And you cannot work with future with cynicism.
Absolutely. Anita ma'am, do you think this kindness and compassion that we talk about can also transform teachers at large more than along with students?
I think so. It does for everybody. Everyone needs to be compassionate, needs to understand what kindness is all about. As I said, it's in the actions. You don't keep saying, I'm kind and you should be kind. It should come through our actions. And the new blood that is coming in as teachers are, full of challenges for them because they are coming after the pandemic. They're coming after seeing that the teachers had to go through a rigorous role reversal of being an academician just by doing learning and teaching in class. They had to take it to their homes, you know stressful, because when you take it to home it becomes even multiple fold with family pressures. You have to look after your husband, you have to look after your kids, you have to look after your in-laws, whatever, maybe pets also. So kindness, very very important. So if you are kind, the others will be, obviously it's just like a bouncing back kind of a thing that comes back to you. Not necessarily, but yes, to a certain extent. Also, the old teachers, what ma'am said is absolutely correct, because they've gone through such a system of the traditional way of teaching, that they don't want to adapt to new things. I keep telling those teachers, you need to lock these areas, throw the key away, get a locksmith or a key maker and get a new lock and a new key so that you can put in new stuff there. And that will only come if your acceptance levels are high. So it all stems from kindness, compassionate, empathy, listener. All these are words, but if you put them in action, they are I think so, the gold and the diamond resources for all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the
So,
new, yeah, and the new teachers need to understand that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's very, very important concern so that the teachers more, I think along with the students, it's also important that there's a saying that even if you're a teacher, you still remain a student all your life. You still keep learning all your life. And I think as more and more as educators, we try to ingrain this into students, it's also very important to take teachers into consideration as well, right? It has been a wonderful discussion so far. I'd just like to get your closing comments on the idea of where do you see the future of classrooms in general when we introduce concepts like compassion and kindness within them? Lakshmi ma'am, what do you think is the future ahead for us?
Um, Classroom is a very complex, dynamic growth space. And adding kindness will only make it better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anita ma'am?
I think so. All of us sitting here also are in a classroom right now. And because we are talking about it, it makes, and connecting with people. I didn't know who Lakshmi ma'am was, and I'm sure she didn't know who I was, but I know one more person. And I know one more person who I can always connect with if I have something to ask. And this is how the connection happens, you know,
Okay.
and strangers become your friends for life. So I think again, that's a universal theme. And that's why we say the world is round and it's very small. And that is what we need to understand and bring it to our teachers and bring it to our children. You know, you go anywhere in the world, kindness is something that will win you over with lots of people around you. Lots of love.
Absolutely. That's really true. It has been such a wonderful time discussing all these important things with you. I'm sure our audience also got a lot many fruitful and insightful things to take away from this podcast. With that, I would like to conclude today's session, and I would really like to thank Ms. Lakshmi Kumar, straight up from Pune, and Ms. Anita Paul, straight up from Jaipur, joining us all here and inspiring us with such valuable thoughts. All of you, please keep watching 8Bs, do subscribe to our channel, and do let us know in the comments how you liked and what you thought about bringing compassion into classrooms. Thank you very much. Seeing you off for today. Goodbye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Lovely meeting you, Anita.